He's just crazy about this store. From the creators of Evil Dead 2. And if this one doesn't scare you, you're already dead. Didn't happen on this day in horror movie history. There's a little misunderstanding there. I believe it was on this day in horror movie history. An unedited cut of this film was released into the universe finally because it was long overdue. But this is a little film called Intruder. So let's dive on into Slasher Sports Cinema.
And I'm here to kill you.
I am Dracula.
You say that I have shed innocent blood. What's blood for, if not for shedding?
6-year-old child with this blank, pale, emotionless face, the blackest eyes, the devil's eyes.
Welcome to Slasher Sports Cinema. Of course, I am your host, Billy Graves, as you can see in the bottom left corner. And, we're still we're keeping this train rolling as much as we can. We're trying to do an on this day in horror movie history kind of a situation. And on day 2, we hit our first hiccup. Day 2. So basically, we got one in a row. One in a row. We'll restart that streak tomorrow, and then the next day, and then the next day. If we can get it 3 times in a row, that's called a winning streak. There's no guarantee that's going to happen, though. I never know how I'm going to start these shows off. I script nothing. I wing it. I want to be genuine with you guys. There's enough scripting in the Monday show because, we have to push whatever our esteemed guest is pushing that day. So it's really important that we get all our shit in on Mondays. But on these through the week episodes, the on this day episodes, we're just doing what we can. Whatever comes up is what comes up. I might pull a clip here and there and try to pull it, but that's all I'm going to do. No scripting needed. But today, we've got a film that came out in 1989. Horrors took place in different locations in the 80s. You had summer camp. You had high school. You had the mall. But, very few horrors happened in your local grocery store. And this is, of course, pre The Mist, because that's probably my favorite horror film that happened in a grocery store, or at least most of it happened in a grocery store. But you can't have an improvement if you don't have the film that set the standard. And I believe the film that we're talking about today set that standard. And of course, I'm talking about the 1989 film Intruder. And so basically the overnight stock crew of a local supermarket, they find themselves being stalked and slashed by a mysterious maniac. That alliteration was on purpose because I love some alliteration. This was a very low budget, isolated film. In fact, it was shot inside of an actual grocery store. It happened in Bell, Colorado. Colorado? No, almost said Vail, Colorado. Bell, California. A little bitty grocery store. What's your favorite grocery store? That's what I want to know. If we can get some people, it's a little early in the show. People aren't showing up yet. But I want to know, what's your favorite grocery store? here in this little rinky-dink town that I live in, Portland, Tennessee. We've got two. One of them is a Food Lion, a little chain. And then we used to have one that used to be called Cash Saver. No, what was it called? I don't remember what it was called, but it's called IG. I think it's called IGA now, or Cash Saver. I don't know. Oh, Steve Morris is telling me. Oh yeah, Kroger's Kroger's a step up from what we've got here, I think. And I don't know. You just made up that last one, Major. I don't know what that is, but it sounds like a mom and pop kind of a situation. Is that right? Grocery stores are kind of the identity of your town. Oh no, you can't beat a Wegmans. You try as you may, Jenny Antonia, but you will not beat a Wegmans. I don't really even know what the hell a Wegmans is. Is that a real place, or did you make it up too? Both of y'all are liars. Okay, more like a Kroger. Okay, I'll believe you since you put it in those terms. I remember back in the day, this little town had a Piggly Wiggly, and Piggly Wiggly was the epitome of fine grocery shopping. It even had little commercials with a little animated pig. Yeah, we liked the Piggly Wiggly, but then it turned into an Ace Hardware, and the rest is history. But when I tell you the stories about working in a grocery store, that was my first job was working in a grocery store. I was paid $5.25 to be just a little stock boy. It's a little stock boy. I'm $16, 16 years old, making $5.25 an hour. Thought I was living large. Okay, I made enough to put a little fuel in my car, and my first big purchase was paying off a speeding ticket that I got in town. No, it wasn't even a speeding ticket. Get this shit. My very first technical traffic infraction was not a speeding ticket. It was, in fact, a loud noise violation, thanks to Westmoreland, Tennessee's finest. Tongue-in-cheek, finest. But what I'd done was I pulled the little, take the little cassette tape, and you had the little holes, right? I would put tape over the holes in the corners. Listen, if you're under a certain age, you're not going to get this. So you may as well just tune me out for a moment. But if you're over a certain age, I'll say 35. If you're over 35, you remember what it was like to take a piece of tape and cover the little holes on basically the shoulders of a cassette tape so you could put it in your little stereo system and record over what was on that tape. But that's exactly what I did. I recorded over some tape, or maybe it was a blank tape, I don't know, and got myself a nice compilation of the Insane Clown Posse. And I believe it was the album Forgotten Freshness. And not even one of the better albums, but it was like kind of some unheard stuff up to that point. So I'm going around town, and I've got this huge subwoofer in my back seat. Yes, my back seat, because it was too big to go in my trunk from the box that was, that was made for it. But they were 15-inch somethings. I don't remember what they were. It was 3 letters, if y'all can remember. Something X. Something X something. X something something. I don't know, but it had an X in there somewhere. And they just basically ate up my back seat. And the kicker is I didn't even have an amp running to this. So it was just basically factory stereo running to this huge box of 2 15-inch subwoofers. And I thought I was some shit. So I've got my stereo turned up as loud as it'll go. And some of the stupidest lyrics ever put on an album from the Insane Clown Posse. And before I know it, they got me hemmed up. I remember specifically where I was. I was pulled over in front of what was a small farmer's bank. It might have been a small citizen's bank. I don't know. But what kills me is there were these three girls who we went to school together, obviously. And they were kind of like the Mean Girls crowd, except it was lighthearted. They were sweethearts, and they were only really playful when they would kind of pick at me and others. But when I was clean shaven and maybe my hairstyle was the way it was, I may have looked like teenage Ralph Macchio. And so they would call me Karate Kid. And I'll tell you exactly who this is: Jessica Johnston, Margaret Cooper, Allison Hewitt. The three of you are embedded in my memory because of that. And it may be because, and I've never said this before to anybody, but I have this really bad habit of giving nicknames to people, and I never tell them the nickname. So it's kind of like, kind of shitty of me to do that, but you know, what are they going to do? They can't kill me. They can't eat me. Both are illegal. So I may have taken that from the likes of Jessica Johnson, Allison Hewitt, and Margaret Cooper, the holy trinity of Westmoreland High School. But I do that to this day, and I give some of the worst nicknames. Maybe to the meanest person in the office, I might call her Misery after Kathy Bates, and I just refer to her as Misery. And maybe there was an old lady named Cynthia who had really long white hair, so I'll refer to her as Gandalf. Some are a little more obscure. There was a lady named Kelly, I think, and she was wearing this all white get-up. It was like a denim jacket, denim jeans. She had these big old sunglasses on, just bopping down the sidewalk, so I referred to her as George Young. And if you know who George Young is, then you already get this joke. But Johnny Depp played the character in the movie Blow, and there's a scene where he's walking through the airport to the song Black Betty, and he is just strutting like headcock. You know what I'm saying? And she just reminded me of that walking down the sidewalk. But I owe that to Jessica Johnston, Allison Hewitt, and Margaret Cooper. So if anybody's listening and you know them, tell them I said so. Tell them they're all right in my book. Those three. What was I even going with? How did I get off on that? Oh, yeah. So I got pulled over for loud music, and those three pass by as I'm being written my ticket. And all I see is the three of them laughing their tits off. And that's my memory of it. I don't know how I got there. Does anybody remember how the hell I got to that part of the story? It doesn't matter. I worked at a grocery store, was paid $5.25, and that was my first big purchase, paying off that loud music violation or loud noise violation to the city of Westmoreland, Tennessee. But this film was originally called The Night Crew. The Night Crew. Yeah, thank you. It was my first big purchase. I did my best to support that little one-horse town, and you know, if I have it if I had it to do over again, I'd still blast that shit. You know what I mean? But yeah, The Night Crew is what this film was called. But Daddy, in 1989, you're not selling a slasher film called The Night Crew. You got to have a title that's going to grab you by the nipples. You know what I'm saying? So when they couldn't find that title either, they settled on Intruder. And now, listen, I know what they're going for. Intruder. Because there's a guy who's unwelcome in the store. So yeah, the title makes sense in a red herring kind of way. But that only works if your poster doesn't give away the fucking killer. It works if your movie case does not give away the killer. So this film was directed by Scott Spiegel. Scott Spiegel. I keep having to correct myself on that. But Spiegel, he was a longtime friend of Sam Raimi, Ted Raimi, Bruce Campbell, they're still obviously great friends because, well, yeah, I would assume they're still great friends, but last I heard, they were all still working on each other's projects. They formed the production company Raw Nerve with Eli Roth and Boaz Yakin. Spiegel did that, by the way. Which they all horror, man, all horror all the time, playing the hits. Got to respect that. There's not too much ambiguity in Raw Nerve, so you know what they're going to be about. They live together in Cali. I believe it was either Sam or Ted Raimi, Spiegel, and either one or both of the Coen brothers. It may have been both. But Spiegel introduced Quentin Tarantino, to producer Lawrence Bender, who is obviously involved in this film. He helped co-write it, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. He was also an actor in a very, very small part. We'll talk about that too. But Bender basically helped get Reservoir Dogs made, man. And without that, shit, we might not have the quality films that we've had from Quentin Tarantino. Some of my very favorites. And he's going to come up in a little bit. But yeah, Tarantino basically slept on Spiegel's couch when he didn't have a dime to his name. So, I mean, come on. But before Intruder, Spiegel was doing a lot of short films, which, I mean, who among us is not doing short films, right? You start off in film, you hit the short films, easily digestible, very good proof of concept. You can use it as an opening, like a cold open in your first feature film, whatever you want to do. There's a lot of different things you can do with short films, and I've talked about this already. But yeah, the fact is, like with the short films, many of these had Sam Raimi, Ted Raimi, Bruce Campbell, or any combination of the three. One of my very favorites of Spiegel's is called Toro, Toro, Toro. And it's basically about a lawnmower that has a mind of its own. It goes on a terror spree. Come on. Stephen King did it. Why can't Spiegel? I guess it depends on how you do it. But there's another one. Okay, this is the Helping Hand. We talked about a really absurd film called Rawhead Rex recently. And Helping Hand is a little short film where the fucking hamburger helper mascot, that little fucking oven mitt, it comes to life in a woman's kitchen. It tries to grope her and kill her. Come on, man. If you were a glove, what would you do? I love Maximum Overdrive. Dude, we could talk about Maximum Overdrive all day and how Stephen King was just coked out of his mind when he made that film. Of course, he couldn't outsource that one. He had to jump in and do everything. He wanted to direct, write, be in the cold open. He wanted it all, man. Honey, this machine just called me an asshole. God damn, what a film. And the soundtrack. AC/DC from pillar to post, man. AC/DC. I bet y'all peeped that spoon, didn't you? Don't say a damn word about it. But, as you can see, there's only going to be quality horror coming from the mind of Scott Spiegel. But, Intruder marked his feature directorial debut. It was partially based around real life experience working in a supermarket. Dude, the truck. I'm going to talk in a little bit because I've got it in my mind to talk about iconic things from horror films. And that goblin, the hobgoblin, green goblin, whatever toy truck, that face, man, you know exactly what it's from. You see it, in a split second, that's from Maximum Overdrive. Man, what a film. And, it's not completely off subject, because who was the star of Maximum Overdrive? Emilio Estevez. Who was a supporting actress in Intruder? Renee Estevez, blood sister. Daddy, that wasn't by accident. That was by design. I had to throw some cheers with that Swiss Miss real quick. I think it pisses me off about Swiss Miss. Those marshmallows, they dissolve pretty damn quick. I need a fistful of Stay Puffed. But yeah, man, we can almost play 6 Degrees of Separation with those damn Sheens and Estevez family members on this film alone. We just brought up Maximum Overdrive. Charlie Sheen's going to come up. Emilio Estevez is going to come up. Renee Estevez, Ramon Estevez, Martin Sheen. I like to call him Martin because it makes me feel fancy instead of Martin, because we know he's from Espanol descent. But well, let's move on real quick. This film was, again, based off some earlier, I guess, real life experiences from Spiegel, because he worked in a grocery store, much like moi. But he made it's sort of a remake of one of his earlier short films, and I believe that one was either called Night Crew or Overnight Crew. I should have looked this up before we started, but I guess I should get Steve's comment off the screen. Sorry about that, Steve. Don't want to overexpose you. Shit, you could be hacked like that, I think. But Night Crew, Overnight Crew, whatever it was more of a Halloween type masked killer kind of a situation. Still very fun because, when you talk slasher films, you kind of like the mask. The mask is a big thing that goes into it, right? You want the good aesthetic. You want to pick the mind of the guy who created it, see what he was thinking. But one thing I do think that we have in common, that I have in common rather, with Spiegel is good mask killer. Listen, man, very few films in the way of slashers get by my radar without a masked killer. And I think about films like Sleepaway Camp. You got an unmasked killer, but it's also an anonymous killer for the most part through the film. I love a good masked killer. And I kind of, want to dive into the mind of the mask creators and just see, like, what were they thinking when they created it? What did they have in mind? What were they going for? But Spiegel and I, big love of the Three Stooges. All right. I don't know if I've ever really talked about that on the podcast, and I don't know why I would on a horror podcast, but I'm a huge fan of the Three Stooges. Ever since I was little, and they would run those all night marathons, and like every Stooges birthday. Oh, it's Carly's birthday. We're going to run an all nighter on TBS, dude. I would find a blank tape and I would be recording that all nighter as long as I could stay awake. And I would pause it on commercials. I would get pissed off at myself if I accidentally got the front end of a commercial. I just wanted to be perfect, but I'd stay up as long as I could and watch those damn Stooges, man. But I was really pleasantly surprised by the Emil Sitka cameo in the checkout line, delivering his "Hold Hands, You Lovebirds" line. He was known for that line in Three Stooges shorts. I am pretty sure we have something lined up. There he is, the Reverend.
Hold hands, you lovebirds.
Yeah, that's the episode where Shemp's trying to get married. I think he's going to inherit a fortune or something, and he's got to get married or he won't get to inherit the fortune. And that girl that he's trying to get hitched to there, she is a student of his. He's a vocal coach, I guess. And the song that she is singing is called "The Voices of Spring." And I remember one scene from that short where they no, hang on. There was another short. It was one where Curly had to pretend to be an opera singer, and Larry or Moe goes up to the old piano player, and he's like easily 300 years old. And he says, "Do you know the Voices of Spring?" And the old man says, "Know it? I wrote it." Classic line. Classic line. It's one that I still use. Anybody ever ask me, "Hey, do you know this song?" I'll know it. I wrote it. Even if it doesn't make sense. They don't get it. They don't get it. Oh, okay. You know, Steve, eventually, yeah, I love anything with Ted Raimi. I play the Corey just because he was in it. I love the game. Listen, Steve, eventually we were going to disagree on something. We couldn't bat 1,000. We could not bat 1,000. I bought the Quarry with a gift card that my beloved son got for me for my birthday or Father's Day, one of the two. I bought the Quarry, paid full price for that son of a bitch. I basically felt like after it was over and done with, I felt like I paid $60 for a choose your own adventure movie. There just was not enough action for me in that game, even though I loved Until Dawn. Loved Until Dawn. But yeah, I don't know what to do there, Steve. We're still friends. I think we can move past this, but I'm not going to forget it. I'll forgive, but I won't forget. But despite receiving the top billing in this film, and it's probably everywhere with IMDb, Wikipedia, the front of the TV or the front of the movie case, the front of the movie poster, Bruce Campbell got top billing in this film and literally shows up at the end to rough up a couple of people as a police officer. And he was probably wearing the same clothes he wore in Maniac Cop. I don't know. And it's a very brief appearance as a policeman. Sam Raimi and Ted Raimi were like super heavily promoted by, I believe it was Paramount, that they were the stars of this film, and they very much were not the stars of this film. The name was featured everywhere, but the back cover of the DVD case, I don't know about the VHS, but I know for sure the DVD case makes it appear that Renee Estevez is the final girl. And she's the first one to go. Spoiler alert. Renee Estevez is the first to go. Of course, we're talking about Renee Estevez of the famed Estevez / Sheen family. She's the daughter of Martin, sibling of Charlie Sheen, Emilio, and Ramon Estevez. And like I said, Steve, earlier we could play a game of 6 Degrees of Separation with the Sheens because the true leading lady of this film, Elizabeth Cox, now Liz Kern, was in a film called The Wraith, which starred Charlie Sheen. And of course, then Spiegel, who we're talking about here, screen wrote The Rookie, which had Clint Eastwood and Carlos Estevez, aka Charlie Sheen. But none of this matters. None of this matters. There's misdirection in so many facets of this film, except for the goddamn movie cover and posters. Like there's no mistaking who the villainous killer is on the front of that movie poster. Nobody else is dressed like him in the movie. And that's the one place you don't want to give away spoilers. Right? But yeah, Elizabeth Cox. Let's talk about her for a minute. She had a few bit parts in a handful of films. Here comes fucking Parker. Oh God, Elizabeth Cox, man, had a few bit parts in some films back in the mid to late 80s, like 84 to 89. And then fast forward to a ridiculously ballsy film in 2006 called Juarez Stages of Fear, where basically they're calling out the cartels, pointing the finger at the Juarez police. And here's the kicker. They filmed this fucker in Juarez, like the most dangerous city in Mexico, probably. And then get this, Elizabeth Cox, now known as Liz Kern, since she is now wed, she works as a news anchor right across the border in El Paso, Texas. And she did so for years. That woman's got ovaries of steel. And she don't give a motherfuck. But one thing's for certain. If the pleated pants police couldn't take her down, the Juarez cartel doesn't have a prayer. Doesn't have a prayer. In fact, a friend of mine who watched this film with me referred to her as Jennifer Pleats. And I'm with it. But you know, the star of this film, though. Amen them pleats. Jen Antonia, you already know. Those pants were pressed under, I don't know. I don't even have a simile. I don't have a metaphor. It was something really heavy and really flat. I don't know. But the real star of this film is Dan Hicks. You're going to see Dan Hicks in a lot of Sam Raimi films. He's just another member of that unofficial troupe. Sadly, we lost Dan back in 2020, cancer. He's probably most remembered as Jake from Evil Dead 2. But that's only because it was just a much bigger film eventually. Intruder was his most important role to me, though. I mean, come on, he's the antagonist. He's got classic lines in this thing, like, "Here comes fucking Parker, Steve, walking down 9 miles, swinging the goddamn head by the hair in one hand and his sandwich in the other." Delivers that line twice. And I want to say that was in another film before that. And it's a repeat of that line. I don't know if it's an homage, but it's a classic line and he delivers it great. And he delivers it so well the second time around. I'm not going to tell you why. I'm not going to tell you why it's better the second time around. But of course, he says, "I'm just crazy about this store. And there's going to be one more killing here tonight. And I couldn't let anyone get in the way. And I guess I got a little carried away. Okay, Bill. Dan Hicks was great, man. And when it comes to memorable scenes, Steve, this is what I was bringing up earlier. We talked about the Green Goblin truck in Maximum Overdrive. Well, the memorable scene for me, this one, I mean, it has many memorable scenes. And I'm not just here to put over a low budget film that could. But when I think about certain scenes that define a film, I think about, well, a few scenes from The Exorcist, like Linda Blair throwing herself around on the bed, or doing that back bend walk down the stairs, or maybe at the end of Sleepaway Camp that I brought up earlier, where Angel is holding the knife with her mouth agape. I like that word, agape. I feel filthy. Well, the scene that defines Intruder for me, and it should for you too, it's probably the scene where I'm trying not to. How do I get away with this without spoiling it? I mean, it was made in '89. You know, fuck it. The scene that defines Intruder for me, and it should for you too, if you're worth your weight in bologna sandwiches, is the moment after XYZ is killed or is revealed as the killer. Jen runs away and he jumps into pursuit, jumping on top of the checkout lines, jumps from one to the next. He finally catches her. But as he's running across those checkout lines, it's just an amazing scene. Seeing them run parallel almost. It's if the movie was bigger during its time, I feel like it would be a more iconic scene. If maybe the sound was a little better, if maybe we had some kind of, I don't know, Carpenter type tunes in this film. Maybe if they jar all the senses, not just the visual. I'm big on sound and film. Maybe it's a more iconic film, or maybe it's a more iconic scene. But to me, that's easily the moment of the film. Easily the moment of the film. And that's Danny Hicks. And he will live forever. This film was made on $130,000. You independent filmmakers out there, you know what it's like. You know what it's like to get by on a $25,000 budget, $5,000 budget, $10,000 budget. It's just ridiculously low. You could do a lot of damage with $130,000. But I'm pretty sure at that point, the budget of this film was considered nearly a micro budget. It has to be, especially with those players in it. But it was produced by Beyond Infinity and Phantom Productions, distributed by Empire Pictures. So it's not like it was an indie film, but it was a super, super low budget. And I think they did a hell of a job, especially because of the next guy I want to talk about, and that's Greg Nicotero. So, to me, the most important member of the Intruder team has to be Greg Nicotero. Fans of the Walking Dead series, they immediately recognize the name Greg Nicotero because Greg Nicotero, he's the executive producer and key special effects makeup artist on that series. He's a protege, I guess you could say, of George A. Romero and Tom Savini. His first notable work was just about 4 years prior to Intruder in Romero's Day of the Dead. And of course, on that set, he's going to meet Howie Berger and later Robert Kurtzman. And from there, they're going to form K&B Effects, which is, still their studio, their special effects studio. But I don't think there's a more prominent name in special effects than Greg Nicotero. If Tom Savini is Babe Ruth, Greg Nicotero is Barry Bonds, just without the really huge head. And really only baseball fans are going to get that, so I don't even know why I brought it up. It's because Barry Bonds was on steroids and his head grew really large. That's all I got. His head did go really huge. But yeah, this film really hangs its hat on the gory kills throughout, and like what the film lacks in top-notch acting, it makes up for in gruesome effects and lightheartedly demented dialogue. And going back to Danny Hicks, he's on another level from his peers. He's on another level from his peers. But we're on the subject of Nicotero, so R.I.P. Danny Hicks. But back to the effects. If you come away from this film and you don't have at least 2 memorable kills, just say you didn't watch the film. It's faster to say that. Nicotero and crew, they were subtle where they needed to be, and just downright audacious when they could be. The cardboard baler kill, to the bandsaw kill. It's a gore fiend's dream. And, this thing's actually heavily censored, or was censored, across all over the UK. There's an unrated director's cut available, which features that bandsaw lobotomy. Oh yeah, Jen, you already know. Jenny, won't you come along with me? Jenny. My favorite is also the bandsaw. If it's not the baler, it's one of the two, though. It is one of the two. That's a Little Richard song, by the way, Jenny. Little Richard, the real king of rock and roll. But that bandsaw kill was one that was taken out of most, if not all, censored versions of the film. It's basically where a character's head is inserted into a high-powered meat slicer, and it goes like right across his teeth, and it's quite wonderful. But there's a, it was originally banned, completely banned, with a quote unquote refused classification in Australia. It did later get only censored by a minute for an R rating. And then for like a video release, it got 3 more minutes knocked off of it. And basically, we can go through the gamut right now of what was censored in those 4 minutes. We're talking about the spike going into Danny's eye, who's Eugene Robert Glazer. Ted Raimi's character, he slowly falls to the floor after he's been stabbed in the head. He's Produce Joe. And that's actually his credit, Produce Joe. Ended up being a vegetable. But there was the stabbing of the checkout girl that's been shortened, especially the blood spray. All shots of Burr Steer's character getting his head crushed. They're all missing. And Sam Raimi's character, he's hanging on a hook through his face. I think it was like through the chin. How else would it be? Billy Marty's character falls down the ladder, and there's like a missing shot of the store owner with bleeding eyes. Of course, there's a bandsaw kill where the dude's face is cut in two. The whole thing was removed. The VHS only shows him being put on the saw, and then like the scene is basically over. This is by far the longest cut on the whole cassette, the whole VHS cassette, because it is a pretty extensive kill. They do not shy away from anything on this kill. Y'all hear that? The little ladies want to make their presence known. They want to make their presence known on this show. But Jennifer, back to Jennifer. Jennifer Pleats, she finds Dave's bandsaw head cut off in the fridge, completely out of the VHS, completely out of that one. And it just basically goes straight to the cops arriving at the door. Scott Spiegel, the director, he actually made a cameo in this film as the bread man. You see him at the beginning of the film, almost when the shit hits the fan. You see him come and knock on the door, and then he's immediately killed from behind by the killer, who we have not yet named. It's Bill. And then, of course, there's a killer holding up the severed head, kissing it, grabbing the knife, just before he starts talking about, here comes fucking Parker. And then there's a couple of other scenes where they cut it out, but never worry. Never worry. You can find anything you're looking for. And hey, y'all hush up over there. You can find anything you're looking for on Shudder with the subscription. If you've got the subscription, like I do, you're going to get this thing uncensored completely. And if you don't have Shudder, you can still watch it with ads. And this is really what I want to push out there. The fact that you can watch with your Shudder subscription, you can watch on Tubi and Pluto TV with ads. Now, I'm not here to tell any tales out of school. Okay, I'm not here to talk any smack about any streaming services. I appreciate all free streaming services, and I will watch your little ads if I have to. But Pluto TV gets a little excessive with the ads. So I stick to Tubi. Plus, Tubi's a little bit more generous than most of your streamers with the creators. So this is something I've heard firsthand from filmmakers. And it's really important that we get those guys paid at the highest rate they can be paid. And Jenny, did y'all catch how I had to like throw something at him just to get him to hush? Steve, I believe it might have been you that I spoke with about the payouts from Tubi. But I spoke with you about it, but I've heard from multiple sources that they're just much more generous to the creators. And I hate using creators because it's such a Gen Z term. These are filmmakers, they're not creators. Don't compare filmmakers with, people doing TikTok dances. Those are creators. I'm a creator. I'm not a filmmaker. Okay. I'm just going to be honest about that. But, I want you guys to give this film a shot. It's one of the films that shows that you can do big things, even with a very small budget. It's one of my favorites, and I hope it will be one of yours as well. I say we just need to look at this trailer before we bounce out of here. Enjoy.
Good evening,
Renee
all my
Estevez.
lady shoppers.
It's closing time,
There's Jenny
So,
Pleats.
we'll be closing in 15 minutes.
but the night crew still has work to do
Oh my god, we're gonna get in so much trouble.
because there's one last customer who isn't satisfied.
No,
This creep keeps calling her. He's driving us nuts.
leave me
I see
alone.
the Estevez in her face.
He wants to slash their prices.
Who's there?
He wants to cut their inventory.
You're crazy.
In fact, he wants to chop until they all drop. And now he's turning their retail store
There's gonna be one more killing here tonight.
into a wholesale slaughterhouse.
This trailer. Oh, look at it. Look at it. I love that scene.
I'm just crazy about this store.
Intruder.
I hate to tell you, but that made my ding dong real hard. Sorry. Not sorry. That's one hell of a film. I want you all to see it. And, before we slide into the gag reels now, I want to ask you to check out our other shows in the Slasher Sports family, the OK Baseball Podcast, Slasher U, and Suki's Honeydew Project. Like and subscribe to Slasher Sports Cinema before we get out of here. So, for the fine folks who brought us Intruder and the rest of the Slasher Sports killers, I am Billy Graves. Now go forth, and may you drink the blood of your enemies from the skulls